Hello Soul, I am Sophia from Twin Flame Gnosis, and in this video we will discover the hidden and unknown history of the soul's journey. Twin flames are not a modern idea, the concept is very ancient and goes back even to the very beginnings of humanity's spiritual and religious history. For when we compare all religions and teachings with one another, we recognize that the soul is the one red thread that runs through all traditions and cultures. And what many do not know is that the knowledge of the awakening, the transformation, and the ascension of the soul belongs to the best-kept secrets in the world. Alongside well-known mystics and alchemists, secret and occult societies were significantly responsible for the preservation and transmission of this knowledge, and they continue to shape mainstream esotericism to this day. So let us find out what these people know that we were never supposed to know. We will also talk about modern coaching systems such as Twin Flame Universe and New World All-Star, how they influenced the concept, and who influenced them in turn. And now, enjoy watching.
Twin flames is a modern term that has become established over time in the English-speaking world. As already mentioned in the introduction, one could also use other words for it, such as dual soul or twin soul. Ultimately, it's always about the soul and its journey. But this is not about the ordinary journey of the soul. We speak of a division, the search for the other lost half and the longed-for return to unity. Let us first undertake a brief historical classification of the term, and examine how the modern concept was influenced and shaped by ancient belief systems and various spiritual personalities and societies. In doing so, I will also show why people are reluctant to talk about the inspiration for modern theory. We will initially focus on the historical roots that have influenced modern teachings. Later we will discover how the concept of twin flames or dual souls surprisingly appears in numerous other cultures and religions that arose independently of one another. The first mention of a divided soul can be found in antiquity. The famous Greek philosopher Plato spoke in his work, Symposium, of humans once being spherical beings who were split by the gods and have since been searching for their other half in order to be whole again. This is likely the origin of the widespread romantic idea of twin flames, the search for the other soul half in order to be whole and complete again. Incidentally, Plato is also the one known for the allegory of the cave. The so-called allegory of the cave describes a group of people who spend their entire lives chained in a cave and can only see the shadows of the outside world on the wall. For them, these shadows are the only reality. Only when one of them is freed and beholds the light outside the cave does he recognize that the shadows were merely illusions and that there is a higher reality beyond the sensory perceptible world. In the 1st to 3rd century, two spiritual currents emerged that would significantly shape modern esotericism and also the concept of the soul's journey. Hermeticism and Gnosis influenced each other or drew from common, even older sources. They were driven by the same question: what is man, and how does he return to his divine origin? They emerged not only temporally but also geographically very close to each other, in Hellenistic Roman Egypt, especially in Alexandria, a melting pot of Greek philosophy, including Platonism, Egyptian mystery religion, Jewish mysticism, Persian dualism, Zoroastrianism, and early Christian currents. The Hermetic teachings and the laws derived from them describe knowledge about mind and cosmos, especially the principle as above so below, as within so without, which shaped thinking about duality and unity. They have their origin in the writings of the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, a mystical and probably symbolic figure, often portrayed as a fusion of the Egyptian god Thoth and the Greek god Hermes. The teachings became known in the Western world through the Kybalion, which was written in 1903 by 3 initiates, and summarized Hermetic philosophy into 7 laws that remain a central aspect of many spiritual systems to this day. While the Kybalion is a rather modern and systematic compilation of Hermeticism, and is more focused on the practical application of these universal laws, the original texts are more philosophical and mystical. They deal with cosmic unity, divine knowledge, and spiritual rebirth. The human body is regarded as a vessel for the alchemical transformation of the mind. The Corpus Hermeticum speaks of man as a mortal being with an immortal soul, or that whoever knows himself knows God, or it says, everything that moves in the cosmos is moved by the soul. The soul that has recognized the cosmos recognizes that it is not from here. It will separate itself from the world like an eagle bursting the chains that bind it. Or also, O soul, you holy one, you are born from light. Yet you walk in darkness as long as you do not remember. Whoever knows himself knows God. To name just a few quotations. It is also said that the laws of the cosmos are the laws of the soul. which is why in the 6th chapter, where it concerns the attainment and meaning of spiritual mastery, we will examine these universal laws more closely. The Gnostic teachings likewise concern themselves with the question of what man is and how he returns to his divine origin. However, it is less about cosmic laws. They go one step further. Gnosis describes the world as a work of a lower creator, an idea that is also hinted at several times in Hermeticism, but less negatively and radically. I will go into detail about Gnosis and the dark secret in the 4th and 5th chapters, and what significance it might have for us. Generally, Gnosis means salvation through knowledge, the recognition of the divine spark within us in order to overcome the illusory world. But there are also entire concepts with strong parallels to twin flame teachings. For example, Valentinian texts speak of the so-called syzygy. Each emanation appears in divine pairs, male and female. These divine pairs or syzygies embody in the Valentinian system the harmonious union of complementary principles, whereby creation is preserved in its original order. Man reflects this heavenly duality within himself, and the separation of souls is considered a consequence of the cosmic fall. In the Gospel of Philip, this motif is continued. There is talk of the bridal chamber, a mystical place of reunion where the soul recognizes its divine partner and is united with it. This union is considered a symbol of spiritual completion, a state strongly reminiscent of today's conception of twin flames, in which the reunion of two halves is understood as a return to divine unity. Incidentally, in East Asian belief systems there are similar concepts. For example, the Ardhanarishvara symbol, which depicts Shiva Shakti as a single form, the ultimate unity of masculine and feminine as divine completion. Ardhanarishvara, which literally means the Lord who is half woman, symbolizes the inseparable unity of Shiva and Shakti, consciousness and energy, spirit and matter. This form stands for the principle that the divine can only exist in the perfect balance of both forces. In Hindu philosophy, this union is understood not as opposition, but as complementary polarity that permeates the entire universe. Here too then we find the idea that true perfection arises only in the fusion of the two divine aspects, a thought deeply related to the concept of twin flames. Among the mystics and alchemists of the Middle Ages, the idea of an inner transformation also appears, and the merging of masculine and feminine principle, which is strongly reminiscent of the concept of divine feminine and masculine energy from twin flame theories. Both Christian mystics, for example Meister Eckhart, Teresa of Avila, and alchemists, Paracelsus, Flood, speak of hieros gamos, a sacred marriage. The legendary philosopher's stone or the transformation of lead into gold symbolically describe the inner transformation of man, an inner alchemy, where lead stands for the unconscious mind which is transformed into gold, the conscious and awakened mind. Terms and processes, a metaphysics and spiritual psychology, as they would later also be found in the modern twin flame concept. In Jewish mysticism, similar concepts of transformation and inner knowledge can be found. The Kabbalah in particular has significantly influenced spirituality into modern times, and thus inevitably also the concept of twin flames. In Kabbalah we find some interesting statements about the soul that coincide with the conceptions of other belief systems. The soul is considered a multi-layered being with a divine core, the Yechidah, which symbolizes unity with the origin. It teaches that souls incarnate again and again through reincarnation, Gilgal, to complete spiritual tasks and ultimately return to the source. There exists the notion that every soul has a cosmic counterpart, the so-called Bashert, with whom it forms a higher unity. This spiritual union, also called Zivug, is reflected in the heavenly pairing of masculine and feminine principles. Many of these concepts show clear parallels to today's twin flame idea, particularly regarding soul division, reunion, and shared soul mission. The Kabbalistic tree of life, Etz Chaim, is also worth mentioning. It symbolizes the return to divine unity through polarity and integration, similar to the twin flame path. The ideal of Tikkun Olam, world repair, through personal transformation and spiritual partnership could even be interpreted as a mission. Some later mystical writings, for example by Isaac Luria from the 16th century, see also Lurianic Kabbalah, teach that after separation a soul goes through several incarnations to find the other half again, especially when something remained incomplete in previous lives. In the 6th chapter we will engage more with the teachings of Kabbalah and what they mean in the context of the twin flame process. In Islam too we find the concept of the soul, but the conception differs somewhat from the other teachings. In classical Islam we encounter two central terms, nafs and ruh. The nafs denotes the individual ego, our drives, desires and fears that we must recognize and purify in life. It is what binds us, and at the same time the source of our growth. The Ru, on the other hand, is the divine breath that God has breathed into every human being, the immortal essence that carries its origin in the divine source and returns to it after death. The Quran describes the soul as something mysterious about which man has only limited knowledge, and they ask you about the soul. Say, "The soul is of the affair of my Lord, and you have been given only little knowledge thereof." Surah 17:85. Unlike Hindu or Buddhist conceptions, there is no reincarnation in Orthodox Islam. After death, the soul awaits divine judgment, and its fate depends on its behavior, intentions, and closeness to God. Sufi mysticism deepens this understanding in a very special way. For Sufis, the soul is not just an individual being but a spark of God that recognizes itself through experience, devotion, and love. The lower soul, the nafs, is purified, the heart, the qalb, is opened, and the divine essence, the ruh, is allowed to unfold. Jalal ad-Din Rumi, one of the most famous Sufi poets, describes love as the path to unity. Love is the astrolabe of God's mysteries. For him and the Sufis, true knowledge is not intellectual but arises from devotion to divine love. In this mystical tradition, surprising parallels to concepts like dual souls or twin flames can be found. Two souls that were originally one recognize each other in duality, mirror each other mutually, and strive back to unity. Ibn Arabi even speaks of twin hearts, kalban mutahaban, that unite in divine love. Unlike in the Western twin flame concept, this is not primarily about romantic love but about the mirroring spiritual connection that overcomes the ego and leads the soul to the original source. Thus, Islamic mysticism also shows that the true dual soul connection is less a romantic ideal than a spiritual reality. It reveals to us that the encounter with the other half of the soul is ultimately an encounter with the divine itself. The duality of the world, the separation, and the challenges serve recognition, purification, and transformation, a universal principle of spiritual evolution, a secret truth that is also hidden in the mystical teachings of Sufism. The Theosophical Society, particularly Helena Blavatsky and Alice A. Bailey, laid the foundation in the 19th century with their teaching of reincarnation, karma, and spiritual development for many modern esoteric worldviews. They understood the soul as a multi-layered divine being that refines itself over many incarnations to return to the source. Although the term twin flame was not used, there was already talk of karmically connected souls that encounter each other repeatedly over several lives. The principle of spiritual polarity, masculine and feminine as complementary forces, was also a central theme. Thus, Theosophy provided important impulses for later twin flame concepts in the New Age and beyond. Besides Blavatsky, Annie Besant and Charles W. Leadbeater also significantly shaped the Theosophical movement. Both expanded the teaching to include psychological and energetic aspects of the soul, and in this context already spoke of so-called twin souls, souls that emerged from the same divine essence and accompany each other through many incarnations. Leadbeater, originally an Anglican priest, joined the Theosophical Society in the 1880s and became one of its most influential authors. In works like A Textbook of Theosophy and The Masters and the Path, he described the spiritual development of man as progressive refinement of consciousness over numerous incarnations. His teaching emphasizes the polarity of masculine and feminine principles as the basic structure of the universe, consciousness and energy, spirit and matter as two aspects of the same divine reality. Even though he did not use the term twin flame himself, Leadbeater laid the groundwork for later interpretations of this concept through his portrayals of soul resonance and recurring karmic bonds. He saw the union of two soul-related beings as an expression of cosmic harmony in which both partners together find higher knowledge and spiritual completion. This conception inspired numerous authors of the early 20th century and flowed into the New Age movement, where it finally became known under the modern term twin flames. Then we have arrived in the 20th century with the well-known psychoanalyst Carl Gustav Jung, who is especially interesting for his research work on coincidences and synchronicities, which are known to be closely connected with the twin flame phenomenon, whereby this gentleman already deserves quite special interest. Otherwise, C.G. Jung provided a depth psychological foundation for understanding spiritual connections with his concepts of the anima, the animus, and individuation. He described that every person carries an inner soul counterpole within themselves, which is often mirrored in the form of intense encounters in the external world. For Jung, Soul development was an alchemical process in which confrontation with the inner shadow and the other leads to becoming whole. Jung saw the human psyche as holistic, but split into consciousness and the unconscious. Central was the idea that every person carries an inner counterpole within themselves. In men, the anima, the feminine soul. In women, the animus, the masculine soul aspect. Here too we find clear parallels. The twin soul as a powerful psycho-spiritual mirror and pioneer of inner transformation. All these commonalities and connections between the various teachings and persons across the centuries are of course no coincidence. Besides the differences, there seems to be a common truth that merely clothes itself in different garments. Jung expressed it approximately thus. The human psyche and the world are connected through a fundamental structure and in exchange. And what many do not know, although actually not difficult to overlook, Jung was not only a psychoanalyst and scientist, he was also a mystic and occultist, familiar with esoteric teachings and also not without relevance for Gnosis, as we will learn later.